everyone. I'm just going to switch the video on, and as soon as we start experiencing problems, I would switch it off. Please let me know if you can see me, hear me, and that's about it. All right. So I'm assuming that everyone can see me and hear me. So we don't have sound problems today or screen sharing problems today. All right, everyone, start typing in your chat boxes. All right, perfect. So I'm assuming that you all can hear me and see the screen. We left off at a question yesterday. We were doing the June 15 question number 1D, and we did not discuss the answers to this question. I'm just going to open the Word document for practice, and let's discuss the answers before we move on to today's session. All right. This is June 2015, question number 1D. All right. So I'm just going to start inking. Right. So you had to do this part where you had to discuss the potential benefits which an effective non-executive chairman could have brought to LICES. This was for 8 marks. For 8 marks, you were supposed to discuss 4 points in your answer. Now, assuming that you have read the entire question, can anyone tell me what were the reasons or what were the benefits to LICES of having a non-executive chairman of the board? Can we just have the keypad back, because I need to scroll through and have a keypad. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to connect the keypad as well. Right, perfect. So I was just going to ask if you were able to identify any reasons why LICES would need a non-executive chairman, or why LICES would benefit from a non-executive chairman. So for 8 marks, you had to discuss 4 benefits of a non-executive chairman to LICES. The first benefit that your examiner has pointed out is, and let me discuss the first benefit myself, and I'm assuming that you've all read it so that we can discuss the rest of the benefits among ourselves. So the first benefit was that a non-executive chairman could have provided a channel of communication, a channel for communication so that other directors could have voiced their concerns regarding Simon Mara's strategy. Now, within the case scenario, it has been specified that Amy knew about using low-grade material for surgeries and was not comfortable with the fact, but the only reason why she couldn't report it was because Simon was extremely domineering, and she felt that she couldn't voice her concerns to the CEO. So had a non-executive chairman been present on the board of directors, a non-executive chairman would have ensured that other directors would have had a proper channel of communication and would have had a channel for voicing their concerns to the CEO had they any reservations about the strategies that the company was following. This was the first benefit that a non-executive chairman could have brought to the board of directors. Can anyone tell me what other benefits a non-executive chairman could have brought to LICES? Scrutinize the decisions taken by Simon Mara. All right. Can anyone else answer as well? Please, everyone. I need to know that you guys are here, that you guys are listening. Jeannie is absolutely right. A non-executive chairman would have been able to challenge and scrutinize decisions by CEO. And effectively, a non-executive chairman could have stopped Simon from taking the decision that he did, which led to deterioration in the company's reputation as well. So within this company, the two benefits that a non-executive chairman could have brought to the board would be, first, a communication channel for other directors to voice their concern, and second, the ability to challenge and scrutinize decisions taken by the CEO. Scrutinize would be to independently evaluate. Scrutinize would be to evaluate decisions or analyze decisions that Simon has been taking. So any other benefit of a non-executive chairman, independent from any influence, ensure regular meetings, because ensuring regular meetings is not a valid reason, because that is a general advantage of a non-executive chairman. For license, within the context of this case, that advantage adds no value to your answer. Lead performance appraisal of directors, again, Syed, that is a general advantage of a non-executive chairman. You have to put it into context of this case for you to be able to get marks. A non-executive chairman, I would write it over here, a non-executive chairman would have ensured ample or sufficient information available to directors for decision making. Now this is very important. I told you that chairman of the board is responsible for ensuring that the board can finish their responsibilities and perform their responsibilities effectively. Within those roles, one of the chairman's role is to ensure that directors have sufficient information available for them to exercise judgment within a board meeting. Had all directors been presented with the information that low-grade material was being used for surgeries, one of them would have objected, or some of them would have analyzed that decision, leading to maybe, probably, Simon not being able to take that decision. But the fact is that a non-executive chairman would have ensured that all directors had sufficient information before the decision to use low-grade material was actually passed by the board of directors. Another advantage that a non-executive chairman could have brought to license would have been a culture change, a cultural change. Now, right now, the board operates in a paternalistic style where Simon takes all the decisions and he effectively convinces the other directors to actually approve his decision. Now, had a non-executive chairman been in place, the culture would have been more consultative, where all directors would have been encouraged to participate in decision making, give in their own perspectives, give in their own points of views before any decision was taken. Hence, this could have ensured that unethical or decisions from only one perspective were not taken. Now, these are the 4 reasons that I think should be discussed in the answer. You can read the model answer, and what I forgot to mention yesterday was that whenever we practice any question within these sessions, please go home or please, after the session, read the model answers given on the ACCA Global website before you move on to further practice. That is going to be extremely effective. Now, I'm not asking all of you to write down the answer and practice questions. What I do expect all of you to do is read the case study, underline the important points, make a structure. This is how you make a structure. I've been making it in front of you to show you that this is how you make a structure. The way I scribble on the question, please make a structure on your question paper, even though it is not going to be marked. So a lot of students ask me whether the examiner is going to be marking whatever you write down on the question paper. Bear in mind that there will be no marks for structuring your answer, because anything that you write on the question paper is not going to be marked. You are doing this solely to facilitate yourself and to improve your time efficiency. So you want to improve the time or improve your speed within the exam. My recommendation would be to read it carefully, structure your answer, then start writing it down so that you need lesser time to write down the actual text in your answer box. So that is very important. Structuring your answer is not for the examiner, it is for you. Anything that you write down on the question paper is not going to be marked by the examiner, but it is only meant for your eyes and it is only meant to give a structure to your answer. So when you're practicing at home, you keep reading the case study, you underline the important points, you write down on the case study what you're thinking, and then you read the model answer, compare it with the answer that you think should be given in the exam, and see if you've gotten most of the points right. If you have not, then you have to go back, read the chapter again, and come back to practice again. All right, so I'm going to turn to the slides since we are left with some of the slides. Let me recap some points for you that we were doing yesterday so that I can create context for today's topics. All right. So yesterday what we did was that corporate governance basically is a set of principles that gives guidance to directors regarding the board of directors structure, the structure of the board of directors, regarding subcommittees of the board, and regarding internal control systems. That is what we are going to be covering as well. So within board of directors, we did two types. We read that there were two types of directors, executive directors and non-executive directors. The basic difference between the two would be that executive directors bring in-depth knowledge of the organization to the board of directors, while the non-executive directors bring independence and the shareholder perspective on the board of directors. While executive directors are going to participate in decision making by giving in-depth knowledge of the company, the non-executive directors are there to challenge decision making and scrutinize decision making in order to protect the shareholders' interest. Now, non-executive directors are kept independent by having several requirements, like a non-executive director should not have been an employee for the last... All right, I'm sorry that you lost video for a second. Please confirm that you can hear me still. Can everyone hear me? All right. All right, that's perfect. If you can hear me, then we can go on. All right, that's perfect. So what we did was that non-executive directors should not have been an employee of the organization in the last 5 years, should not have had a business relationship with the organization in the last 3 years, and so on and so forth. We did a lot of criteria. We then did, in board of director structure, that CEO and chairman roles should be segregated. Now, listen to my question carefully and answer. I'm just going to check your knowledge because I am going to treat this like a class. Can anyone tell me why is it necessary to segregate the roles of CEO and chairman in one line? Can anyone tell me in one line why is it necessary to segregate the roles of CEO and chairman according to corporate governance? Come on, people, start writing down in your chat boxes. I want to know that you were listening yesterday. One person should not have power to ensure independence, to avoid misuse of power, unfettered power, conflict of interest, CEO may dominate the board. Those are all correct answers. Well done. All right. So the second is the CEO is responsible for running the company, while the chairman is responsible for running the board. The chairman runs the board through a casting vote, so he essentially has veto power in the board. The chairman can stop a decision from being taken and encourage a decision that is being taken by the board by using his veto power, by using his casting vote. Now, I come to today's topics, and the first topic that we are going to be covering, we are going to be starting subcommittees of the board, and the first subcommittee of the board that we are going to be covering is Remuneration Committee. We are then going to be doing Nomination Committee. There are two other subcommittees of the board, the Audit Committee and the Risk Management Committee. But we are going to be covering Audit Committee in a while, not right now, and the Risk Management Committee when we start doing risk. So we are going to be covering the roles of these two committees in the upcoming sessions. What we are now going to do is do the roles of Remuneration Committee and Nomination Committee before we move forward. All right, so I'm going to come back to this slide. I just need to open a new slide so that I can scribble on it. All right, that's perfect. Okay, within Remuneration Committee, let's first do what is the Remuneration Committee, what does it do, and what are its roles. All right, so the Remuneration Committee is primarily responsible for setting remuneration of executive directors. So, since non-executive directors are not remunerated, the Remuneration Committee is going to be setting the remuneration of executive directors only. Now, can anyone tell me what kind of directors will constitute the Remuneration Committee? Will they be executive directors? Will they be non-executive directors? Or will there be both kinds of directors on the Remuneration Committee? So I've asked the question and I'm going to ask it again. What kind of directors are going to constitute the Remuneration Committee? The NEDs, EDs, or both? All right. Now tell me, those of you who are saying 100% NEDs or only NEDs, you're absolutely right. Remuneration Committee can only have non-executive directors. I tell you why. Because executive directors cannot have a say or cannot influence their own remuneration. Because if executive directors were asked to set their own remuneration, the company would go bankrupt very, very soon, because every executive director would feel that he is entitled to a lot of bonuses and a very high salary throughout the year. So in order to avoid that, not only is the Remuneration Committee only comprised of non-executive directors, the executive directors should not be able to influence any part or any component of their remuneration package. Other than that, a general guiding principle of the Remuneration Committee is that remuneration of executive directors should be sufficient to attract, retain, and motivate directors. Now this is very important. This is one of the basic guiding principles given to Remuneration Committee. The guiding principles are that remuneration should be sufficient enough to attract, retain, and motivate executive directors. Now, I'm not mentioning non-executive directors over here, because non-executive directors do not get remuneration for their services. What do non-executive directors get? How does the company pay non-executive directors? Come on, start writing in the chat boxes. I want to know that each and every one of you is listening, they understand. Come on, start writing in the chat boxes. In the chat boxes. They do not get a salary, Sikandar. That's the wrong answer. A lump sum amount were paid. A fixed fee. All right. Everyone, write it down in your notes now. Non-executive directors are not paid remuneration. They are paid, and I'm going to quote, you're going to write this down for future reference, a fixed fee for the number of meetings attended. Full stop. That's it. All non-executive directors are paid a fixed fee for the number of meetings attended. That's it. Most of you were right. Well done. All right. So, a remuneration committee is only going to be deciding the remuneration packages of executive directors, and now we are going to study the roles of remuneration committee in slight detail. So I'm just going to erase some of the text that I've scribbled in order to leave space for myself. All right. So all of this is mentioned on the slides as well, but since I'm extremely attuned to writing on the board, I'm treating Word documents like my board, and I'm teaching you with the help of a board. All right. The first role of a remuneration committee is setting remuneration policy for all directors, executive directors. So within remuneration policy, your remuneration committee is first going to decide the basic salary bands. So in order to understand what basic salary bands are, look at this. So director, every director with 20 years of experience are going to get more than $100,000 every year. That's one salary band. Any director with 15 to 19 years of experience are going to get a salary of maybe, and we can have a band here, and just 80,000 to 9,999 per year, so on and so forth. Now look at these bands, and these bands are not director specific. These bands are generally set as policy for director remuneration within the company. These are called the basic salary bands. This is going to be included in the company's remuneration policy. Now, basic salary bands are based on market rates. So, the remuneration committee is going to look at what other companies within the same industry are paying their executive directors, and they are going to set their salary bands based on those competitive rates in their company as well. These are also set based on market conditions, not just market rates, market conditions. Now listen to what I'm going to say very, very carefully, because I'm going to be asking a question. Vikas, that's absolutely right. So, market conditions. Okay, listen to market conditions carefully and then answer my question. Market conditions are the demand and supply of executives in the market. In a market where highly skilled labor is very low in supply, there are higher chances that executive directors would be highly paid, or would they be moderately paid? You have to answer in one word, highly or moderate. In a market where highly skilled executive directors are very low in supply, they are more likely to be highly paid or moderately paid. Highly, because that's demand supply mechanism. Anything that is lesser in supply is higher priced. Well done. Also in a market where there is very low demand for skilled labor, in a market where there is very low demand for skilled labor, in such a market, executive directors would be highly paid or moderately paid, where they are low in demand. Come on, hurry up. Moderately. That's brilliantly done. Well done. All right. So that's what I meant. Basic salary bands are not only decided based on market rates, they are also based on the market conditions that get to decide what the salary, basic salary of executive directors is going to be. Within remuneration policy, another thing that the remuneration committee has to set is the split between basic salary and performance related bonus. So the remuneration committee will decide what percentage of remuneration is going to be paid in basic salary and what percentage is going to be paid based on performance related elements. So if, all right, I'm just going to erase this so that I can use this for another example. In one package, what do you think the split should be? Should directors be paid 30% of their package in salary and 70% in performance-related bonus? Or should it be the other way around? 70% in basic salary and 30% in performance-related elements. Come on, people, in your chat boxes. The other way around. Hassan says the other way around, 30% salary. No, that would be foolish. It should be the other way around. All right? No, it will not. Majority performance. 30 salary. All right. Amar. Okay, the correct answer, and I'm sorry for misleading you intentionally. I wanted to discuss the correct answer with you. The correct answer is it should be a 50-50 split. So 50%, and this is just a general benchmark. This is just a general principle. There is no hard and fast rule set by stock exchange that the remuneration package should be 50% split. However, corporate governance says that a best practice would be to split the remuneration package equally between salary and performance-related element. Now listen to this carefully. The reason is you want to give a fixed portion, a hefty fixed portion to directors in order to motivate them on a monthly basis to perform better. If you give them too high a portion of their remuneration package in performance-related element, you are motivating them to manipulate the profit figures because they know that most of the money is going to come from performance-related elements. If you're going to increase the percentage of basic salary to 70%, then there is not enough motivation for directors to improve profits, and that's how company performance will start going down because the directors won't care, since 70% of their money is coming in the form of monthly salary. So in order to avoid both situations, corporate governance says there should be a balance in their remuneration package. It should be equally split between salary, basic salary, and performance-related element. So I'm just going to erase this and go on to their next role. So the first role was setting remuneration policy for all directors. Within remuneration policy, the remuneration committee was setting the basic salary bands and the split between basic salary and performance-related bonuses. Their second role is setting individual directors' pay packages or remuneration packages. So, and I know that you're going to have a field day with this, but in order to keep you guys awake throughout the session and interactive throughout the session, can you please tell me what should you be able to see in a good multinational company's CEO's pay package? What should you see? You would see monthly salary. What else would you see in the CEO's pay package of a multinational company? Come on, in your chat boxes. What would you expect to see in the remuneration package of the CEO of a multinational company? Benefits in kind, incentives, allowances, performance, benefits in kind, allowances. Alright, allowances is a huge word. Please don't use it loosely. But yes, you would see profit related bonus that is supposed to motivate the director in the short term. You would see share options or shares that is supposed to motivate the director to improve the company's performance in the long term. This is very important. Performance-related element is given to, especially profit-linked bonuses are given to directors in order to motivate them to improve company's performance in the short term. So that's on a yearly basis. And share options are given to directors in order to motivate them to improve the company's performance over the long term, which is going to be 3 to 5 years. So both of these elements have different objectives. One's for the short term, the other one's for the long term. You would also see benefits in kind. So you would see cars, medical allowances, so on and so forth. You would see pension contributions as well. So within their roles, within the remuneration committee's roles, you would also see them setting individual directors' pay packages as well. And that includes every individual director's pay package, CEO, the sales director, the marketing director, so on and so forth. They will make small changes to pay packages according to the type of director that they are setting remuneration for. All right. So that's their second role. Their third role within remuneration committee is setting severance packages. Now, severance packages are only paid to directors, only paid when directors are asked to leave the company during their contract term. So listen to this carefully. Normally, an executive director would sign a contract of 3 years with the company. If an executive director's contract is terminated during those 3 years, he will be paid a severance package. Now, these severance packages are not paid to directors if they complete the 3 years of their contract and then leave, because in that case, there is no severing of contract. A severance package will only be paid when and if a director is asked to leave within the tenure of the contract. Yes, Sunny, it's also called that, specifically in this part of the world. All right. Can anyone tell me in 2 words, what is the motivation of directors to have severance packages in their contracts or in their remuneration package or in their remuneration? What is the motive? If he resigns because then no severance package. Severance package will only kick in if the company asks him to leave within the tenure of the contract. In 2 words, what is the motivation behind severance package within a remuneration contract? That's brilliant. Job security. Most of you have given me the right answer. To give them job security. A severance package is put in the remuneration package in order to ensure directors that most likely the company is not going to terminate their contract within 3 years, and this is their form of job security. This is only paid if the company is going to terminate a contract within 3 years or within the tenure of the contract. This is an executive director's job security. So when we are talking about employees, normal general employees, there is no actually tangible job security in their contracts. But for an executive director, there is a tangible job security in their contracts because you're talking about the executive management of the company. All right. Another role of remuneration committee is report in the annual report. So a remuneration committee is going to be preparing a remuneration committee report, and that is going to be included in the annual report. It is going to include their roles. So what roles do they perform within the company? Their report in the annual report is going to include a report on how they discharge their duties throughout the year. So any changes they made in the policy, any changes they made to the split between basic salary and performance related element, they're going to report in the annual report, and they're going to give that to the shareholders, because remember, ultimately, at the end of the day, this remuneration is being paid from shareholders' money. So they should be aware of how much are they paying to their executive directors just to discharge their fiduciary duty. Another responsibility for remuneration committee is compliance with laws, specifically in areas where stock exchanges has laws regarding director remuneration. So if the stock exchange has laws regarding director remuneration, then compliance with those laws is also the remuneration committee's responsibility. So if you look at the slides, there are a lot of roles and responsibilities of remuneration committee discussed. I have also scribbled for you. So whatever you want to memorize, if you want to memorize this, you can. If you want to memorize from the slides, you can. But these are the roles of the remuneration committee. We're just going to quickly open which document? I scribble so much, I tend to lose documents as well. All right, so we are going to practice this. We are going to be doing December 2013, question number 1. See? All right, please open the day 1 document. All right, this question. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to read this case study, and that's only because you have not read this case study before. I'm not going to be giving you this much time for case studies that we've already discussed. So 10 minutes, what you are going to do is briefly explain the meaning of labor market conditions in the context of executive pay. This is for 2 marks. And critically evaluate the decision to award Mr. Who such a high level of reward in comparison with local rates of pay on Haika Island. This carries 8 marks. And now it's question time. So can anyone tell me, we are doing December 2013 question number 1. See? Alright, so can anyone tell me, what does the verb critically evaluate mean? In the chat boxes, everyone. So critical evaluation would mean just discussing the negative points of Mr. Who's pay package, just discussing the positives, or both. What does critical evaluation mean? Both, negatives and positives, or just negatives or just positives? Both. Remember that. I told you that in yesterday's session. I'm going to tell you that again. Please include both. Critical evaluation and analyze mean the same thing. Positives and negatives both. You have 10 minutes. It is 6:40 right now. We resume at 6:50. Come on, hurry up. You have to give me two positives about Mr. Wu's pay package and two negatives about Mr. Wu's pay package. Come on. All right. I'm assuming that all of you have read the question. Can you please confirm? Are you back? Are you guys here? And have you been reading the question? All right. Perfect. And you've given the answers right. Good. Well done. I don't have the time to read so many things. So can we just like scroll down? All right. So we are going to discuss. But well done for writing this down. This is brilliantly done. I like that you're making an effort. So let's do this together. The first is briefly explain the meaning of the labor market conditions, and the meaning would be the demand and supply of skilled executives is labor market condition. So within this answer, you can also give an example and say, in a market where highly skilled executives are highly demanded, it is very likely that they are going to be paid highly. And in a market where skilled executives are lower in supply and are very rare, it is also then likely that they are going to be highly paid. In a market where skilled executives are not demanded highly, or where skills are not highly rated, it is very likely that executives are going to be moderately paid, and that's what you have to answer. You don't have to write too much, remember. The benchmark is that you have to write a maximum of 3 sentences, 3 lines per mark. So that's the maximum. Please don't think that that is what you must write. That is the maximum that you could you would want, right? So, all right. Next is critically evaluate the decision to award Mr. Who such a high level of reward in comparison with local rates of pay in ACCA Island. Let's first discuss the positives of Mr. Who's pay package. The first positive would be Osama, the summary of P1 question requirements are in session 1 slides. It's probably the second slide of the session. Can everyone hear me? I need confirmation. All of you, can everyone hear me? All right, that's perfect then. Okay, so can anyone tell me what is the first advantage or the first positive of awarding Mr. Who such a high level of rewards? The first advantage is, all right, that Mr. Who is highly skilled, and for his skills, his pay should match the skills that he brings to HEC, HEC being the name of the company. So the first positive is that Mr. Who is highly skilled, and for him to be paid highly, that's because his skills are rated highly, and his pay should match the skills that he brings to the board of directors, to HEC. So that is one of the first positives or the first advantages of awarding Mr. Who such a high level of pay. The second advantage or the second positive of such a high level of pay is Mr. Who has had to relocate from an area where pay levels are high. And in order to motivate him to relocate, a high level of pay should be awarded. Now, if Mr. Who was not awarded such a high level of pay, he probably would not have relocated, because back where he comes from, executives are highly paid. Mr. Who would have definitely not relocated had he not been awarded such a high or offered such a high level of pay. So the two advantages that I see in Mr. Who's high pay package is, number one, he brings skills and experience to the board of directors, and skills and experience should be rewarded with a high level of pay, and his pay should match with the level of skill that he's bringing to the board of directors. The second biggest advantage of awarding Mr. Hu such a high level of pay is that Mr. Hu has had to relocate to serve HEC. In order to motivate him to relocate, a high level of pay would have been necessary because back where he comes from, executives are highly paid. And if the company had not offered him a pay level that was commensurate or matching with that level of pay, he wouldn't have relocated. And that's why, in order to motivate Mr. Hu, a high level of pay package would be necessary. Now let's talk about the negatives. I'm sure you found a lot of negatives in his pay package. Let's just talk about those. Can anyone tell me what are the negative aspects of paying Mr. Hu so highly? HEC may struggle in going concern? Not at all. Can anyone tell me what are the negatives of paying Mr. Hu such a high level of pay? Because the other workers are paid less, Muna. Well done. All right. What else? Other employees may become demotivated. Well done, Hassan. Other employees demotivated. Usman. Demotivate others. Saeed is correct. Talha is correct. Fellow workers, Mohsen is correct. Well done. So, lower motivation for other workers who have to work in harsh conditions and rates are low. So, when other workers who have to work in harsh conditions see that the executive is extremely highly paid and he doesn't have to work as hard as they do, that might demotivate them and that might increase labor turnover for HEC as well. What is another disadvantage of paying Mr. Hu so highly? Can anyone tell me? Ali, you're absolutely right. The cost of living isn't much, so it just seems outrageous to pay him so much. Well done. Well done, Ali. That indicates that you have read the case properly. So the cost of living on Haika Island, so I'm just writing H Island because Haika, I don't know how to spell Haika. H Island are low. Pay should reflect the relatively low cost of living on the island, where he seems to be the highest paid man. So these are the two disadvantages and those were the two positives. If I have to tell you how many paragraphs to answer this in, you will make one paragraph for labor market conditions, 2 paragraphs for the positives and 2 for the negatives. In total, you're going to be answering this question in 5 paragraphs. All right, now listen to this carefully because there is no tip and technique that I'm going to tell you at the end. These are your tips and techniques. Listen to this carefully. Within these paragraphs, please leave 2 to 3 lines and then move to a next paragraph. Use paragraphs to your advantage. Please leave 2 to 3 lines in between every paragraph before you move on to the next paragraph. How is that going to help? Because often students realize that they've left some important details in their answer while doing the question paper. It is then that these students cut out details and then add details and the paper looks extremely unorganized. In order to present a well-presented paper, what you have to do is you have to use paragraphs to your advantage. Please leave 2 to 3 lines in between every paragraph in order to ensure that you have enough space between paragraphs to add details afterwards if you want. Please make sure that you're using separate paragraphs for separate sentences. Now, some students would mention both of the negative aspects in one paragraph. That is wrong. Please use a separate paragraph for separate points. All right. So Amir, you just have to wait. I will probably be giving a namaz break very, very shortly because I have certain topics to cover, and after that I'm going to be giving you a namaz break. In any case, please remember that all of these sessions are recorded. So anything that you miss, you will cover up in the recording. All right. So I'm just going to open another side, and before that I'm going to refer back to my sites. Okay, so we were here and we just did remuneration committee and we covered a question for that as well. All right, no, there have been no changes in the syllabus. All right, the next is nomination committee. Let's now do what the nomination committee does according to corporate governance. Okay, so we're now going to be covering nomination committee. Okay, listen to this carefully because again I'm going to be asking lots and lots of questions. So nomination committee is primarily responsible for nominating executive directors and non-executive directors on the board of directors. Remember that I've used the word nominating. I have not used the word appointing because executive directors or non-executive directors, both, are nominated by the nomination committee, but they are appointed by who? Come on, in the chat boxes. Come on, people. I want you all to write down in the chat boxes. They're nominated by the nomination committee, but the ultimate appointment is being done by shareholders. Well done. I like how you've started using an abbreviation that I use. Please bear in mind that do not write shareholders as SH in your exam. That is wrong. You have to write shareholders in the long form in your exam. I like how you use exact terminologies like I do, but please don't write it in the exam. That's going to be detrimental. You have to write it all in the exam. All right. So the nomination committee will nominate directors on the board of directors. Ultimate appointment will be done by the shareholders. Now, can anyone tell me what would be the constitution of the nomination committee? Should there be executive directors? Should there be non-executive directors, or both in the nomination committee? So, majority EDs, all right, both, at least half of NEDs. All right, the correct answer, I like how you are giving me the correct answers. I hope you're not reading it off the slides or the book, but yep, that's the correct answer. And the answer is both. So both executive directors and non-executive directors would constitute the nomination committee. Why? Because executive directors, it is an F8. Perfect, Sayed. All right. So the executive directors are going to tell the nomination committee the kind of directors that are needed in the company. And the non-executive directors are going to ensure that nominations of executives and non-executives both are done independently and based on merit. Please remember that both are serving different roles on the nomination committee. By having both executive directors and non-executive directors on the nomination committee, the company ensures that executive directors tell the committee what is the requirement of the company, since they know the company's operations in detail. And the non-executive directors will ensure that every nomination on the board of directors is done independently and on merit rather than based on familiarity. All right, now let's do the roles of nomination committee in detail. The roles of nomination committee. I'm just going to erase some of the text so that I can reduce the text that I've written. All right, the first role of the nomination committee is ensuring that there is a balance in numbers and a balance in skills on the board of directors. So we studied that according to corporate governance, there should be a balance in the number of executive directors, so equal number of executive directors and equal number of non-executive directors on the board of directors, and there should be a balance in skills on the board of directors. Who maintains this balance? The nomination committee. Nomination committee is responsible for identifying gaps in the board. So they are going to identify if there is a lesser number of executive directors or lesser number of non-executive directors, and they are going to ensure through nominations that those gaps are filled on time. So they are going to be ensuring that the board has balance in numbers in order to ensure that executive directors or non-executive directors are not able to dominate decision making. Both have equal legal status, both can influence decision making equally, and none of these parties can dominate decision making. The second role or the second balance that a nomination committee has to strike is a balance in skills. So a balance in skills is necessary. Why? Because to improve the quality of decision making, every decision should be analyzed from multiple points of view rather than just one. So this is necessary. All right, corporate governance does not specifically say which kind of director should be in majority. Corporate governance says that nomination committee should have a mix of both kinds of directors. All right, Bilal, I don't understand your question. I read it through, but I cannot understand. Can you break it down for me? All right. Meanwhile, please understand that the first role of a nomination committee is striking a balance in numbers and striking a balance in skills through nominations of directors. The second role of the nomination committee is deciding on the optimum size of the board. So, can anyone tell me what the size of the board depends on? What would the size of the board depend on? What should be the size of the board? Should the board be big? Should the board be a smaller board? What does the size of the board depend on? What is the optimum size of the board? Size of the company, how huge, well done, all right. So remember, how does the nomination committee decide what is the optimum size of the board? By looking at the size of the company, by looking at the complexity of decisions. The more complex the decisions, the better multiple people would actually discuss it among themselves and then reach a consensus. The more complex or the more complicated the decisions or the more complicated the operations, the higher the number of directors needed on the board of directors so that they can conduct brainstorming sessions, discuss it, and then improve the quality of decision making by ensuring that complexity is broken down, discussed, and the correct decision is reached. Diversification of projects, well done. So this is all, these are all. Remember, nomination committee does not have a specific benchmark in mind. So to say, the nomination committee is not going to say that the board should have 8 people on the board of directors. The nomination committee is going to look at the type of organization. It is going to look at the size of the organization. It is going to look at the diversification of projects. It is going to look at the complexity of decisions and then tell you what the optimum size of the board is. Another important consideration is cost, because the bigger the board, the higher the cost that is going to be incurred in the board of directors. So the nomination committee should decide if they want a bigger board, can they afford a bigger board or not? No, Bilal, top level management is not nominated by the nomination committee. That's done by the human resources. So they are just going to nominate the directors who serve on the board of directors. All right. So the third rule of nomination committee, after ensuring balance and after ensuring the optimum size of the board, is diversity. So nomination committee is responsible for ensuring diversity on the board of directors. What does diversity mean? I'm just going to erase this so that we have lesser confusions. So what does diversity mean? Diversity means having individuals from different backgrounds, on the board of directors. Now remember, diversity is a newer concept and diversity is extremely important. Diversity of gender on the board of directors, diversity of ethnicity, the diversity of culture from on the board of directors. So gender, culture, ethnicity, so on and so forth. Now, diversity is extremely important for global organizations that have global investors, so investors from all over the world, and global consumers. Remember, a diverse board can understand the needs of diverse consumers and diverse investors. So, in order to improve the quality of decision making, it is very important for the board to have diverse directors on the board of directors who understand the needs of diverse consumers and diverse investors, and they can then attend to those needs or address those needs accordingly. A board of directors that does not have diversity cannot understand what people want from different parts of the world from the organization. So different parts of the world and different consumers from different parts of the world have different needs from a product. Now understand that the same company, Honda, often introduces a different design for Middle East, a different design for America, and a different design for European countries. Why is that? Because every area and every type of consumer from different areas have different requirements from the design of their product and from the design of their car. So Honda does not introduce different designs because it's introducing different qualities. It's introducing different designs because it understands the consumers in different parts of the world, and it caters to different consumers by differing the designs that are launched in different parts of the world. That's because Honda operates with a diverse board of directors who understand what consumers and investors need from the organization. I'm going to give a 5-minute break for namaz. We are going to come back in exactly 5 minutes. Please don't take longer than 5 minutes because we're already short on time. I don't want to prolong that. There's a 5-minute break for namaz till 7:18. It's 7:13, 14 actually right now, and we resume at 7:19. Please hurry up. A very short break. I'm hoping that you all are back. Let's continue our session. We have a short break again when I'm going to be doing a question with you. So let's continue. We were discussing diversity and the fact that diversity can bring a lot of advantages to the board of directors in the form of better understanding of consumers and investors, and that it would ultimately improve the quality of decision making. All right. So once diversity is also ensured by the nomination committee, let's go back to one of the next responsibilities of nomination committee. All right. Next responsibility of the nomination committee would be succession planning of directors. So succession planning would be who would replace directors once contract is finished. So once the 3-year contract finishes and it is not renewed by the company, nomination committee is going to be planning who is going to replace an executive director. Specifically, succession planning is extremely important for the CEO, because a new CEO, when a new CEO is hired, his successor is nominated from that day and is trained alongside the CEO, so that when the CEO retires or when the CEO does not renew contract, another CEO is already trained to step in his place and take up his responsibilities. I'll tell you why. Because while other directors' learning curve can be afforded by the company, a company cannot afford the learning curve of a chief executive officer. So when succession planning is concerned, succession planning for a CEO is of utmost importance to nomination committee, so that, for example, if I am hired as the CEO of an organization today, my successor would be nominated today and would be trained alongside me, so that when I retire, another person is trained and ready to step in my shoes, so that I don't have to afford his learning curve. All right, so this is extremely important. Remember, CEO successors are not hired. So basically what the company would do is they would tell the CFO or the finance director or the treasury head that they are next in line, so that they know that they will have to take up responsibilities of the CEO once they retire. So succession planning is 4th role that is kept for nomination committee. The 5th role of a nomination committee is ensuring that performance appraisal of directors is done regularly. So appraisal is regular and that appraisal is objective. Now this is extremely important. The performance appraisal of directors should be objective. So the company should have proper benchmarks against which a director's performance can be measured. Now remember, you are not talking about a normal general employee for whom you will set key performance indicators and you will keep changing those key performance indicators as the person progresses in his employment. Remember that you are going to be appraising directors sitting on the board of directors. For these directors, having objective measurement techniques or objective management tools measurement tools is extremely important, since the board would want to know how effective a director is before his or her contract is renewed for another 3 years. Now this is extremely important. You are going to be setting a contract with severance package for the upcoming 3 years. Performance appraisal of such directors should be objective rather than subjective. So when you are appraising the performance of a director, can anyone tell me what kind of objectives or what kinds of KPIs can be set for a director? Remember, we are talking about a director, not just an employee. So what sort of KPIs could we set? I can tell you some KPIs. I would say his participation in strategy would be 1. So when I appraise the performance of a director, I'm going to be thinking how much this director has contributed to my strategy. Another thing that I will be thinking while evaluating the performance of a director is his contribution to management of risks. So when I appraise the performance of a director, I am going to see whether this director identifies and manages risk for his area effectively. For example, can you tell me one risk that a human resource director would face? Anyone? Write down in the chat boxes. I want to know that you guys are back and that you guys are awake and you are listening. Tell me one performance objective for human resource director. Labor turnover. That's perfect, Saqib. That's perfect. Staff turnover, Mavish, you are absolutely right. Abbas is right. So, if I'm going to be, so one risk for human resource area would be labor turnover. Why is this a risk? Because the more people leave your organization, the more you will have to hire, and recruitment process is a costly process, right? So labor turnover is one of the risks that is that a human resource director would face. Now, in his performance appraisal, I would see whether the human resource director has reduced the risk of labor turnover. So I would see what labor turnover was before the human resource director and what is the labor turnover after he joined, or what was the labor turnover at the start of the year and how did he improve on it by the end of the year. So that gives me an objective performance appraisal tool for me to appraise his performance by. So if labor turnover was 6 at the start of the year and it has increased to 16 at the end of the year, then that means your human resource director is not managing risks in his area appropriately. So one of the performance appraisal benchmarks would be his contribution to strategy. Another performance appraisal benchmark would be his contribution to managing risks in his area. Another benchmark, performance appraisal benchmark would be conflict management. So how good is a director when managing conflict within the organization, within his department and with other directors? So when I measure a director's performance, I want to see the ability of the director to manage conflict within his department and with other directors as well. Another benchmark for performance appraisal of a director would be his ability to respond to crisis. So how good is the director in his ability to respond to crisis? Every time the director faces a crisis, how does he respond? Is he quick to respond to it? Does he already have a contingent plan in place? So how good was a director when he faced a crisis? Now, crisis would be different for different directors. A marketing director's crisis could be an advertisement that does not work well with the audience. So a good marketing director would respond to this crisis quickly by pulling this advertisement, maybe making changes to it, and then reintroducing it to the audience to see whether the audience accepts the marketing strategy. So when you're appraising performance, the nomination committee would ensure that performance appraisal of directors is objective and it is done against proper benchmarks like participation in strategy, like contribution to management of risks, like conflict management, like the ability to respond to crisis. Now, this topic is covered separately in slides. I have put in the slides in your day 1 sessions. Those are slides numbers, okay, hold on, I'm just going to tell you 32, 33, and 34. I'm just going to mention it over here for you to see. So slides 32 to 34 mentioned appraisal criteria. I've only put them in so that you guys can see them and memorize them. I'm going to move on to one of the next objectives or the roles of a nomination committee. And those are, the next role of a nomination committee would be induction training. So that is one of the last roles of nomination committee. The 6th role is induction training and CPD. So induction training is done once when director is appointed to the board. Once the shareholders have appointed the director on the board of directors, his initial training is going to be called induction training. Once the directors are on the board of directors, their skills should be kept up to date through CPD. So updation of skills through CPD and their initial training through induction training. Remember, induction training is a part of the recruitment process. So when a director is appointed, when he is recruited, initial training is done by nomination committee. It is arranged by the nomination committee in order to ensure that the director can perform duties without confusion. So remember, in induction training, this director is going to be told about other directors on the board of directors so that he knows the people that he's working with. This director will be told about SOPs, as in standard operating procedures, manuals for processes. SOPs are also called manuals for processes. So how is the purchase transaction initiated? How is it recorded? So on and so forth. He is going to be given minutes of previous meetings in order to see what or how the company conducts decision making. He's also going to be given forecasts so that he knows that what are the basic main decisions that the board has already taken and what are the forecasts for the upcoming 5 years. This is all a part of induction training. This is all the information that is given, that is arranged by nomination committee to be given to newly appointed directors in order to make sure that they can contribute to strategy from the first day that they join. If you don't conduct induction training of directors, they will be confused as to what purpose are they serving on the board of directors, and that's extremely important. You must understand that induction training of directors is of utmost importance to the company. Now, CPD is conducted in order to ensure that directors' skills are kept up to date, because once skills are outdated, the quality of decision making will go down. So how does a company ensure CPD? How does a company ensure continuous professional development? How does a SOP stand for? Standard operating procedures. They are manuals for processes. I wrote manuals for processes so that you would understand. All right. So CPD would be conducted in order to ensure that director skills are up to date and decision making is improved. So these are the roles of a nomination committee. one of the next topics that we are going to be covering within day one, and it seems like day one is never ending, are the types of boards. All right, here, types of boards. So I'm just going to start inking on this because we already have too many Word documents open. Okay, so types of boards. This is the next topic that we are going to be doing. In P1, you're going to be studying about two types of boards, a unitary board and a two-tier board. Let's look at what these boards are before we actually consider what the advantages or disadvantages of a certain board are. All right, so I'm just going to open another slide. In your P1 exam, you may get the example of a unitary board or a two-tier board. Two tiers mean a two-tier board. A two-tier board means two levels of board. All right, let's just first do what a unitary board means. A unitary board means one level of the board where all directors enjoy equal legal status. So decision making is in the hands of all directors, whether they are executive directors or non-executive directors. Both have equal legal status, both have one vote each, and both cannot supersede each other. So non-executive directors are not supervising executive directors are not supervising non-executive directors. In essence, both are serving different roles within the organization. Executive directors bring innate knowledge of the business to the board of directors, while the non-executive directors bring independent scrutiny on the board. In a two-tier board, and this is the kind of board that you've already been studying, this is the kind of board that we have studied about since the beginning. In a two-tier board, there are two levels of the board. The upper level is called a supervisory board. And then there's a lower level called a management board. Now, the concept of executive directors and non-executive directors is only for unitary board. When you're talking about a two-tier board, there is no concept of non-executive directors, so to say. In the supervisory board, you will see representatives of all major stakeholder groups. So you will see the representatives of all major stakeholder groups on the supervisory board. For example, you will see representation of the company's major suppliers. You will see representation from the company's major banks, that are the major finance providers. You will see representation from trade union, maybe representation from major customers, major institutional shareholders, so on and so forth. In the management board, you will see the top level or executive management of the company. So, your CEO, your CFO, marketing head, sales director, all of them will be in the management board. Now listen to this carefully because this is extremely important. The decision making is only done by the supervisory board. These are the decision makers. So the supervisory board will take the decisions. The management board only advises but cannot vote. On decisions. So, in a unitary board, both executive directors and non-executive directors can and do vote on decisions. In a two-tier board, the supervisory board makes the decisions, while the management board only advises on which decisions to take. The ultimate decision is taken by the supervisory board. Now, those are the two differences within a unitary board and a two-tier board. You will never, ever be asked, yes, Mohsin, you can. Alright, so you will never, ever be asked about which board, type of board is better. You will never be asked that. What you will be asked to do is evaluate about the two types of boards. You will have to evaluate a unitary board and evaluate a two-tier board. Evaluation would mean positives and negatives both. You should know both. Please don't think that it is your job to tell the examiner which kind of board is better, because both boards work successfully for different companies. Different companies will have different needs. So different types of boards will be appropriate for different types of companies. You will not be asked to say which board is better. You will be asked to evaluate. Now, in a unitary board, one of the basic advantages is that there is independence and the fact that there is equal legal status. However, since all of the directors have an equal legal status, all can vote, there is more likely to be conflicts in a unitary board. Can anyone tell me one of the biggest disadvantages of a supervisory board, of a two-tier board? Can anyone tell me one of the biggest disadvantages of a two-tier board? Anyone? Cost would be one, very down circuit. One of the biggest disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage would be that those people who are running the operations of the organization, the management, they have no say in decision making. And remember the fact that at director level, money does not motivate directors, authority does. These directors, the CEO, the CFO, the marketing head, the sales head, they're all working for authority. They all want to say in decision making. Why? Because they've given service, years of service to the company. They run day-to-day operations. They have inherent knowledge of the company. If you take away decision making from their jobs, there's hardly anything left. And supervisory board is taking decisions. Remember, tell me, I've just told you who is in the supervisory board. You have to tell me in yes or no. Is supervisory board independent of the company? Is supervisory board independent of the company? Independent would mean no business relationship in the last 3 years, no employment in the last 5 years. Would it be independent, the supervisory board? Not at all. No, because suppliers would represent their own interest, the supplier's interest. The banks would represent the bank's interest or the finance provider's interest. The consumers will represent their own interest, and the trade union will represent the employee's interest. None in the supervisory board is serving the company's interest or bringing independence to the board. They are serving their own interests. The supplier will ensure that every decision taken will ensure timely payments to suppliers. Banks will ensure that every decision taken will not hurt the enemy, will not hurt the terms and conditions of banks. The consumers will ensure that every decision taken provides value for money to consumers. Trade unions will ensure that employees are well paid, they get good working conditions, but none of them is actually working for the profit of the organization. Is actually working for the improvement in performance for the organization. So when you're talking about the supervisory board being independent, are they as independent as non-executive directors? The answer is no. The answer is no. But does two-tier board have its own advantages? The answer is yes. The two-tier board has its advantages and its disadvantages. A unitary board has its advantages and its disadvantages as well. And countries like Japan, European countries like Germany have used, Denmark, have used two-tier boards to their advantages and are still using two-tier boards successfully. So if you have to evaluate which board is successful, you will say both structures of the board, both types of board are successfully run by companies because different companies will have different requirements. If you want to see the advantages, this is the slide that you have to cover. Let's cover this slide point by point. All right. So in a unitary board, all directors, including EDs and non-executive directors, are members of unitary board. They have equal voting rights, so equal legal status. All directors are of equal rank. They can influence strategy by using votes, and they have equal legal and regulatory liability. There is no distinction between strategic oversight and operational management because these are the ones who will take strategic decisions. So the CEO is also participating in strategic decisions and he will implement them as well because he is the one who manages resources and implements them. So marketing head sits on the board of directors and he's going to be the one who implements the marketing strategy as well. So there's no distinction between strategic oversight and operational management. In a two-tier board, the responsibilities are split between the supervisory board and operational board. The supervisory board decides on strategic issues while the operational board executes the strategy and advises the supervisory board. The supervisory board is responsible for legal and compliance issues, so they will be responsible for ensuring that stock exchange laws, other country laws are actually complied with. The operational board do not have the same level of responsibility and power. However, one of the biggest advantages is all stakeholders are represented and decision making will be faster since lesser people are making decisions. If management plus supervisory board had to take decisions, there would be too many people taking a decision, like in a unitary board where all directors have to reach unanimity, have to reach a consensus and then take a decision. But with two-tier board, that's not the case. They don't need the management board to participate in decision making. The supervisory board can only take decisions and leads to quicker decision making because fewer people will take decision. Will conflicts be higher in a two-tier board? Yes, because suppliers will often conflict with consumers. Will conflicts be higher in a two-tier board? Again, the answer is yes, because employees will often conflict with the needs of consumers or the needs of banks. So conflicts are probably going to be higher in a two-tier board. But is one more successful than the other? There is no saying, because you will have to evaluate both kinds of boards. All right. The question that you have to do, the question lined up is June 2012, question number 4C. Mercifully, this is not a long form case study, so you can do it quickly. I'm going to do go to page number, day 1 slides. This is June 2012, question number 4C. And if you look at the requirement says distinguish between unitary and two-tier boards and discuss the difficulties, these underlying difficulties, discuss the difficulties that Plum family might encounter when introducing a unitary board. Now, at present, this company, Plum company, is operating with a two-tier board. And they want to change to a unitary board. You have to discuss the difficulties only, not the advantages, just the difficulties. Now, when you're looking at mark allocation, this carries 3 marks and this carries 4 marks. You have to distinguish between unitary and two-tier boards. This is a direct, straightforward requirement in which you don't have to you don't have to give the context of the case. You just have to mention the differences between a unitary board and a two-tier board, and then you have to discuss the difficulties that this family might encounter when introducing a unitary board. All right, so you have to discuss at least 2 difficulties that this family might encounter. You have 5 minutes to do this. It is 7:50 now, and we resume at 7:55. Please hurry up, read the requirement, and answer the question. All right. So I'm hoping that you were able to read through the question. This was a smaller question. I see that one of you is in asking questions regarding there is a supervisory board and no NED. How can I say that supervisory board consists of NEDs? Right? You have to understand that I'm not the one who's typing the answers in chat boxes. I'm only talking to you. But Nayan, like I said before, the concept of independent non-executive directors does not exist in a two-tier system. A two-tier system would have representatives of all stakeholder groups, but if you want to see independent non-executive directors on a two-tier system, you won't find them because there are no independent directors on a two-tier board. So Nawal is absolutely right. They should have a balance, but they lack that as well more. No. So you had to answer, you had to say, or you had to talk about the difficulties that this family will encounter in introducing a unitary board. The first difficulty that the company would face would be the change in long-held values, because this company has been run by one particular family with a two-tier system for a very long time. And if these values were to change, the company would encounter cultural problems where the directors would find it hard to work with non-executive directors. Now, where would you see these lines? There they are, including supporting their own long-held values and beliefs. Now, previously, this company was being run according to the values of the family that owned the company. Now, when this company is going to be listed, and now when the board is going to become unitary, there would be a change in long-held values as other non-executive directors would represent other shareholders' wants as well. And this change in values is going to bring difficulty for this family who was running this company according to its own set of values, while other shareholders might hold other values or might follow other beliefs. So non-executive directors, when they come on a unitary board and when they are introduced within the company, they will introduce new strategies to the board of directors and change the values, so to say, of the directors, change the culture within a company where decision making will be from multiple perspectives and not just the values that the family believes in. So that would be the first difficulty, or that would be the first change. The second difficulty would be the loss of control of the family as unitary board would require equal legal status for all directors. So previously, this family is used to taking decisions just on its own because they were in the supervisory board and they were the decision makers for the company. Now, when the non-executive directors come, they will be given an equal legal status, which means the family will lose control on decision making since other directors will have the same voting rights as well. So yes, decision will slow down. Loss of ownership will happen. So here I'm trying my utmost, but don't worry. In these sessions, I will cover all the topics. That's something that I'm looking at as well. All right. So let's continue. I've included diversity as well, but since I've already covered that with you, I'm not going to be covering it on the slides. So we're going to start stakeholders right now. This is one of the most important topics in your syllabus. You have to pay attention. You have to understand and make sure that you understand through the slides. All right. So I'm just going to open another Word document for me to scribble on. Okay. The next topic that we are going to do is stakeholders. Okay, remember, stakeholders are entities or groups that can affect or are affected by an organization's activities. So, within this definition, these words are important: can affect or are affected by an organization's activities. These are stakeholders. Why are stakeholders important to directors, or why are stakeholders important in P1? Because consideration of stakeholders, and writing short form, please don't write it like I do. You have to understand that you have to use full words in your answers. Consideration of stakeholders is important to improve decision making. Why does a director consider stakeholders? Because he knows that stakeholders can affect the organization or are affected by the organization, and it is important to consider what they want from the company. It is important for directors to consider stakeholders in decision making in order to improve the quality of decision making. So for stakeholders, what should a good director do? Or what are we going to do in P1? The first step in a decision-making process, so we're just going to look at it from a decision-making point of view. Decision-making process, the first step is that a good director identifies, I'm just writing ID, I mean identify, identifies stakeholders. So whenever I'm taking a decision, and you have to listen to this carefully, whenever I'm taking a decision, my first step would be identifying those groups that are affected by my decision or can affect my decision. Remember that I'm saying my decision again and again, because remember, an organization has multiple stakeholders. Are all stakeholders affected by every decision that the organization takes? The answer is no. Remember, I'm going to ask the question again and you give the answer this time. An organization has multiple stakeholders. An organization is affected by, and different groups affect an organization, right? So, are all stakeholders of the organization affected by all decisions taken by the organization? The answer is no. Some certain stakeholders are affected while others are unaffected. The first thing that we do in a decision-making process is we have to identify which stakeholders are involved with this decision. The second step that we would do is identify the claims of stakeholders. So what do they want within the organization? What do they want from the organization? The third step would be to classify. I'm just going to explain all of these steps in detail, but you should just bear with me and keep jotting this down. I'm going to put this all into context. Classify stakeholders. And the fourth would be to manage them, manage stakeholders, as in take a decision. All right. So now let's look at it in detail. Whenever a director wants to take a decision, the first step would be to identify which stakeholders are affected by the decision. Let's identify some stakeholders for a company. Can anyone tell me stakeholders of an organization? Any stakeholders? Start coming up with ideas. Tell me any stakeholder group of an organization. All right, Suleiman, thank you for starting. Employees. Okay. Second, government. Good. Third, trade union. Well done. Suppliers. I like how all of you are participating. Well done. Thank you. That keeps me on my toes. That keeps you on your toes as well. Customers. Right. How could we forget about shareholders? Thank you, Suleiman. Shareholders as well. All right. So that's the first step. Tax authorities. Well done, Aman. All right. So the first step is to identify the stakeholders of an organization. The next step is, what do stakeholders want from the organization? Claims of stakeholders mean, what do they want? What do they need from the organization? So let's look at the claims. Employees. When you're talking about employees, what is an employee's claim from the organization? What does an employee want from the organization? Fair wages, security, job security, good working conditions, so on and so forth. Right, timely wages, well done. Okay. What do suppliers want from the organization? We are just looking at claims. What do stakeholders want from the organization? Suppliers want timely payments. We can also say that suppliers want good, consistent business. Right? When you're talking about customers, what do they want from the organization? They want value for money. Customers also want after-sales services. So several claims of stakeholders from an organization, right? I'm just going to erase these because we are now going to be discussing something else as well. So we saw that the first step to making a decision is identifying the stakeholders of that decision. So who are the people or who are the groups that are going to be affected by the decision? There are several stakeholders that can be affected. Employees, shareholders, government, suppliers, customers, so on and so forth. What we want to see is, number one, is their claim valid? Do they want valid things from my organization? And second, is there a conflict in claims? Is there a conflict in claims? So can there be a conflict in claims as far as stakeholders are concerned? Now, listen to this carefully. Employees' claim is they want high wages. They want fair wages, good working conditions, right? These are all costs. If I increase costs, I will have to increase the price that I charge from customers. Now, when you're talking about customers, customers want economic or low prices, right? These two claims are conflicting. If I want to increase wages and give good working conditions, I will have to increase the price that I charge from consumers. And that conflicts with my consumers' wants from my organization. Are all claims going to be conflicting? No. Are some claims going to be conflicting? Yes. All right. For example, let's take another example. Suppliers want timely payments. Right? But if I want to make timely payments to suppliers, that means that I want to recover money from customers quickly. That means lower credit period to customers so that I can recover money from customers and pay my suppliers. Is there a conflict? Yes, because customers would want a more relaxed credit period so that they can take their time in making payments. Is there a conflict between the two? Yes. So the first thing that I do is I identify stakeholders, parties who can affect my organization or my decision or are affected by my decision. The second thing that I do is look at whether the claims of stakeholders are valid and whether there is a conflict. If there is a conflict, I will have to prioritize. I will have to see which customers can I keep happy and which customers will I want to compromise on. Remember this. First step, identify. Second step, what do they want from my organization? Third step, if there is a conflict, how do I prioritize? Which stakeholder should I listen to? Which stakeholder should I compromise on? Does everyone understand up until now? Do you understand stakeholders up until now? Just now. I'm going to explain it further, but just now. Yes? No? Everyone? That's perfect. Thank you. All right. So, first step, identify stakeholders. Second step, I want to know what do they want from my organization. Third step, their wants will clash. Their wants will conflict. I want to know what to do. I want to know what the next step is going to be. Should I listen to them? Should I compromise on their wants? What is my next step? In order to prioritize, this is very important. In order to prioritize stakeholders, that who should I listen to first? Who should I listen to second? Who should I listen to third? I will have to classify stakeholders. So in order to prioritize, I classify them so that I know who is more important to me and who is lesser important to me. In order to know who is more important, I classify my stakeholders. That brings me back to my slides. Let's look at stakeholder classification. Remember, we are classifying stakeholders to prioritize. Then, why do I want to prioritize them? Because I want to see who to listen to first, who to listen to next, and then who can I compromise on completely. All right. So, the first stakeholder classification is narrow and wide. Please write it down and then I am going to discuss it. Narrow stakeholder groups are those that are smaller groups with high impact by decision. And wider stakeholder group is a larger group with low impact by decision. All right, now I'm just going to explain. Listen to the example carefully. I'm going to be giving one example. Please make sure that you understand it. All right, for example, your organization has decided or is considering to shut down one production facility. One of its production facilities in one of the areas, your organization is deciding to shut it down. Now, all right, is everyone having voice problems? Is everyone having voice problems? Can you hear me? We're clear. All right, that's perfect. Okay, so the organization has decided to shut down one production facility. All right. If I shut it down, the narrow stakeholders would be the factory workers that work on the production plant. So factory workers is a small group of people that is going to be highly impacted by this decision to shut down the production facility. The wider stakeholder group would be the admin staff, the administration staff that is at the head office. So the admin staff at the head office might be affected by lower production levels in the future. But is it directly affected today by shutting down the production facility? No. Who are the narrow stakeholders to this decision? The factory workers who work in that production facility. It is a smaller group of people, a narrower group of people with a very high impact of the decision on this group. A wider stakeholder group would be a larger group of people on which the impact of decision is slightly lower than the narrower group. So the wider group would be the larger group of people, admin staff, who's working for the organization in the head office. That is the difference between narrow and wide stakeholders. So if once done, the second, sorry, this is the first, this is the second. The second stakeholder classification is primary and secondary. All right, let's first see what are the definitions of primary and secondary. Does narrow necessarily always be a smaller group? Yes, it's most likely going to be a smaller group. All right, so primary and secondary stakeholders. The first primary stakeholders are those that are necessary or important for survival of the organization. So this is a stakeholder group without which an organization may not survive. Secondary stakeholder groups are those that do not affect organizations' survival. So those stakeholders that do not affect or cannot affect an organization's survival. If I were to give an example, I would say institutional or majority shareholders would be primary stakeholders because the absence of institutional shareholders or majority shareholders can affect finances and ultimately the survival of the organization. Directors, executive directors are primary stakeholders because they are the primary influencers of strategic decision making. Secondary stakeholders could be minor or smaller suppliers or customers that can easily be replaced and the absence of which cannot affect the survival of the organization. The third stakeholder classification is active and passive stakeholders. This is the level of interest that a stakeholder has in an organization's activities. All right, now this is very important. Listen to this carefully. An active and passive. Yes, major customers would most often be primary because if major chunk of revenue is earned from these customers, then they can affect the organization's survival. Now, active and passive is very important. Please listen to this carefully. Active stakeholder would mean a stakeholder that takes high level of interest in organizations' activities. And a passive stakeholder means a stakeholder that takes low level of interest in organizations' activities. All right. Now, the careful part is active and passive classification has nothing to do with power or authority. So, stakeholders with very high levels of power can still have very low level of interest in the organization, and stakeholders with very low levels of power can have a high level of interest within an organization. So this is very, very important that active and passive stakeholder classification has nothing to do with the level of power or authority in an organization. I am giving an example. For example, institutional shareholders. Now, they have a lot of power in an organization. They have a lot of authority in an organization. But do they take a high level of interest in day-to-day operations of the organization? The answer is no. Yes, they turn up for AGM. Yes, they will use their votes. But do they take a high level of interest in day-to-day operations of the organization? The answer is no. Why? Because they have probably invested in other organizations as well. And since it is an institutional shareholder, they have the same levels of interest in several, 20 or 30 other organizations as well. Government is a passive stakeholder. Why? Because it does not intervene in an organization until all laws and regulations are complied with. Till then, the government has the authority, but since it is not taking interest in an organization, it will be passive stakeholder. Please remember that active stakeholders would be executive directors who take an active interest, high level of interest in day-to-day activities of the organization. This is extremely important from exam point of view. Active and passive stakeholder classifications have nothing to do with the level of authority that a stakeholder has within an organization. This has to do with the level of interest that they are willing to take within an organization. Alright, so a government is not willing to take interest within an organization as long as the organization is compliant with all laws and regulations. Institutional shareholders, as long as they're getting their dividends, as long as their investment is secured, they will not take a high level of interest within the organization. However, executive directors have a high level of interest within the organization because they run day-to-day operations. Now, can active stakeholders, can passive stakeholders become active? Yes. The government becomes active every time an organization breaches laws and regulations. Institutional shareholders become active the day the organization takes decisions that they don't like. So these classifications, they are not static, they can change. Institutional shareholders will be passive until the organization does something that they don't like, in which case they will become active. You have to remember this. This is extremely important that don't think that institutional shareholders would always be passive within an organization. The next classification, or the fourth classification, is voluntary and involuntary stakeholders. The classification is mentioned, or the basis of classification is mentioned in front of the voluntary and involuntary bold text. The choice in being is a stakeholder. Voluntary stakeholders are associated with the organization through choice. For example, shareholders. Shareholders choose to buy shares of an organization. For example, employees. They choose voluntarily of their own free will to seek employment within an organization. For example, customers. They choose based on their own free will that they want to buy products of a certain company. Consumers, employees, shareholders are all voluntary stakeholders because they willingly associate or they are willingly affected by the organization. Involuntary stakeholders are those that are affected by the organization unwillingly. For example, environment. The noise pollution, air pollution, or water pollution created by an organization affects the environment. Is the environment a stakeholder? Yes. Is it affected through its own free will? No. So, voluntary and involuntary is based on the willingness of stakeholders. If stakeholders are associated with the organization willingly, then they are voluntary stakeholders. If they are unwillingly affected by the organization, they are involuntary stakeholders. Legitimate and illegitimate classification is the fifth classification. This is based on director's point of view. The director's point of view. This will depend on whether the director thinks that a stakeholder has a legitimate claim on the organization or an illegitimate claim on the organization. For example, a director might feel like suppliers have a legitimate claim on the organization because they provide raw materials, so they can legitimately ask for timely payments. That is the director's viewpoint. The same director might feel that pressure groups are illegitimate. Why? Because they have no legal claim on organization. This depends on the organization's point of view. This depends on the director's point of view. Any stakeholder group that the director feels has legal or valid claim on the organization is a legitimate stakeholder, while any stakeholder that the director feels has no valid claim from the organization would be an illegitimate stakeholder. All right. Similarly, these two classifications are very similar. Similarly, recognized and unrecognized stakeholders are those that are recognized or wishes, or they get their wishes fulfilled by organization. Remember, why are legitimate and illegitimate and recognized and unrecognized stakeholder classifications in line? Now, I'm going to ask a question, you're going to answer it. I can see that lesser people are answering questions. So I want you all to participate and write down the answers in the chat boxes. Tell me, a stakeholder that the directors have decided is illegitimate. A stakeholder that for directors is illegitimate, has no valid claim as far as directors are concerned. Will directors recognize that stakeholder group in their decisions? Yes or no? Simple. Yes or no? A stakeholder group that directors have decided is illegitimate, has no legal claim on the organization, will they recognize that stakeholder group in their decisions? The answer is no. Why? Because if I as a director feel that a stakeholder has no legal claim on my organization, why would I make decisions for that stakeholder? Why would I recognize that stakeholder? Remember, an organization will only recognize those stakeholders that the director feels have a valid claim on the organization. Remember that. Remember that. An organization will only recognize those stakeholders in decisions that the directors feel have valid or legitimate claim on the organization. And that's why these two are in line. I will never make decisions for those stakeholders who I feel are illegitimate for my organization. All right. Pressure groups are those groups who want to influence activities of organizations. For example, pressure groups would be a charitable organization to save the environment. Or pressure groups would be, I'll give an easy example, those groups that claim that tobacco causes cancer. These become pressure groups. Why? Because these groups are asking tobacco companies to shut down their operations. They apply pressure on organizations to influence their decision making. Are tobacco companies shutting down? No. Are pressure groups always successful? No. But pressure groups are those groups that are created to put pressure on the organization's activities. Remember, Recognized and unrecognized stakeholders are those that are recognized or whose claims are fulfilled by directors in decisions. Are directors more likely to fulfill claims of legitimate stakeholders? Yes. And that's why legitimate stakeholders are most likely to be recognized as well. Unrecognized stakeholders are those that are not recognized, or the claims of who are ignored by directors within decisions. A director will not recognize a stakeholder only when the director feels that this stakeholder group is illegitimate, has no legal claim from the organization. So I could say that pressure groups are illegitimate for my organization, since I want to produce and sell tobacco. And tobacco is like any other commodity in the market. Where there's demand, there's going to be supply. So I'm only supplying a product that is demanded by consumers. Pressure groups say that my product causes cancer. But I feel like pressure groups are not legitimate. They are illegitimate stakeholders. When I take decisions, am I likely to consider what the pressure groups want from my organization? The answer is no, I won't. Why? Because pressure groups are not only illegitimate for me, they are also unrecognized by my decisions. So unrecognized would be those that I don't want to listen to in my decisions, that I don't take decisions for. So illegitimate stakeholders would most likely be unrecognized as well, because I don't want to listen to them, because I don't think their claims are valid. So once you have classified stakeholders, I'm going to go back. Once you have prioritized stakeholders, once I've decided who to listen to and who not to listen to, my next and my last move is actually taking decision. And that's where Mendelow's framework comes in. So that's where Mendelow's framework comes in. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to manage stakeholders. I'm now going to map stakeholders. I'm now going to take a decision. How am I going to take a decision? I'm going to map stakeholders using Mendelow's framework. Please remember this framework. You have to memorize it, because this is tested in the exam as it is. So on this, there's high and low, and high. All right. So according to Mendelow's framework, there will be certain stakeholders that have high power. And how do you look at power? How do you decide which stakeholder has high power? By looking at the authority to influence decisions, and low interest within the organization. Low interest would mean low interest in day-to-day operations. So I'm just writing OPS, I mean operations. So high power means the authority to influence decisions, and low interest would mean low interest in day-to-day running of the organization. For such stakeholders, the organization has to keep them satisfied. Can you give me one example of a group that has high power but low interest in an organization? Very good. One example is government. Another example is institutional shareholders. Now listen to me carefully. Government has a high authority because it can legally shut down operations of the organization, and through laws and regulations, it can influence decisions taken by the organization. Institutional shareholders have high power because they can use their votes to influence decisions. And since they are majority shareholders, they have higher voting rights. These two have low interest because they don't take interest in day-to-day operations, but yes, they can take interest if the organization does something that they don't like. For such stakeholders, Mendelow's framework says you need to keep them satisfied. so that they don't start taking high interest in the organization. For groups with high power, low interest, Mendelov says, keep this group satisfied. Keep institutional shareholders satisfied. Keep the government satisfied. Keep complying with laws and regulations. Keep paying dividends on time. Keep increasing share price so that these guys are satisfied. Why? Because once these groups are not satisfied, they are going to influence decision making. They're going to start interrupting in the company's affairs. They will intervene in the company's affairs. A second group is high power, so high authority, high influence on decisions, and they have high interest in day-to-day activities as well. Can you give me example of one stakeholder group that should come here, who's a key player, that should be engaged very, very closely? Well done, executive directors, your EDs, your major customers, from who you're earning maybe 60% of your revenue, your major suppliers, from who you're getting 80% of your raw material. So major customers, major suppliers, your executive directors would come in this group. These are your key players. These are the ones who should be top priority for directors when taking decisions. So any stakeholder that comes here is your top priority. It should be your first priority. Now, the next quadrant is low power but a very high interest. So no influence, little or no influence, but very high interest. So day-to-day operations, high interest. Can I say operational staff? Operational staff can take virtually no strategic decisions, but they have high interest because they aren't from the organization and they run day-to-day business of the organization. Hence, yes, they will be over here. Also, pressure groups. Well done, Mohsin. Pressure groups will be here. I'll tell you why. Pressure groups have no decision-making authority. But high interest because they want to monitor the organization's activities. Monitor the organization's activities. Small customers, Usman, yes, you're right as well. For these stakeholders, Mendelov's framework says keep them informed. Why do you want to keep them informed? Because even though they have low power, they have high interest. So ethically, the company keeps them informed of all decisions that the organization is taking. The last quadrant is low power and low interest. So low interest in the organization's activities and low power to influence decisions. I could say part-time workers who work for a specific period of time and then they will be let go. So basically part-time workers or migrant workers. Who are going to work on a contract and then go back. They have no real actually say in the organization's day-to-day operations or the organization's decisions. So for them, Mendelov's framework says this should be the least of the director's priorities. Now, this entire framework, this entire concept dwells on the fact that, listen to this carefully, directors cannot keep all stakeholders happy through all decisions. Directors will have to prioritize because directors cannot possibly keep all stakeholders happy through all decisions that they take. So they prioritize. So they ensure that they first identify stakeholders, they then see what do stakeholders want from the organization. They then classify stakeholders to see who do we listen to and who do we not listen to, we want to prioritize. And then lastly, directors take decisions. They manage and make a decision. That's how a good decision is taken. So basically, this entire concept dwelled on the fact that directors often take decisions that all stakeholders are not happy with. So how do the directors prioritize? By using the Mendelov framework, by using stakeholder mapping. Let's do a question. This is December 2014. I want to discuss this question before we sign off for the day. Let's do December 2014. Let's open to day one practice questions. All right. And this is the requirement. So the requirement is discuss, all right, discuss stakeholder claims of Cornflower's employees and customers, so 1 and 2, and how these claims may be in conflict. So how are these claims in conflict? 4 marks for this, 3 marks for this. For 2 marks, you have to discuss the claims of employees. For 2 marks, you have to discuss the claims of customers. And for 3 marks, you have to explain how these claims may be in conflict. That is the mark allocation. You have exactly 10 minutes to read this through. It is 8:42 right now. We resume at 8:52 and then we discuss the answer. Hurry up. You have 10 minutes to read this through. Also, I could give you lesser time. I'll tell you how much to read through. All right. Please read till here. The collapsed building. That's it. Please read through till here. Does everyone understand? This is December 2014, question number 1A. December 2014, question number 1A. Please read through the first page of this question till the collapsed building on the second page. I've marked it. Let's go. Hurry up, people. All right. So guys, I'm back earlier than 8:52, I know, but I'm banking on the fact that you guys have read what I asked you to read, because I did sort of abridge the version that you had to read. Please tell me if you can hear me. Yes? Everyone? All right, now you can. All right, that's perfect. Let's just quickly discuss what the employees want. So what are the employee claims? And then what are the customer claims? And then we'll go forward and discuss what the conflict is. So employees of Cornflower. The employees of Cornflower. What do they want from the organization? Can anyone tell me? Muna is absolutely and most usually right. I am identifying, I'm very good with names, by the way, and I am constantly identifying which students are consistently giving me the correct answers, and there are no prizes for that, unfortunately, but you have made a mark on me. That's good. All right. Safety and healthy working conditions, Arsalan, you're absolutely right. Safe working conditions, Ali, you're absolutely right. Proper wages and benefits, Arsalan, you're right as well. So high level of working conditions, so better working conditions, proper health and safety arrangements, and another would be fair wages. You could also say job security. I'll tell you why. Because within this case scenario, they've mentioned that the employees get 0 contract hours. So that means that when their contract finishes, they are not paid anything for the amount of time that their contract is not renewed. So what they would what this means would be that job security is also one of the employees' priority. So job security, high level of working conditions, and fair wages are employee claims from Cornflower. Similarly, customers, what do customers want from Cornflower? Can anyone tell me who is the customer of Cornflower? Anyone? Who is the customer of Cornflower? Within this case, Cheap Kit. Well done. So Cheap Kit is the customer. What do they want? They want timely delivery of goods, garments in this case, and they want cheap prices because they are a budget clothing line, so they can't pass on, and listen to this carefully, they cannot pass on the effect of increase in inputs to their consumers. So how do I pass that on? If I buy something for $100, I sell it for $150. $50 is my margin that I earn, right? So margin or whatever, it's my profit that I earn. Similarly, markup. So similarly, if the price of input increases to 150, remember, for a budget clothing retailer, they cannot increase their price because they're a budget clothing line, which means their selling price would still be 50, which means 0 profit. Remember, Cheap Kit wants lower prices because it knows that it cannot pass on the effect of increase in prices to its consumers. So that's what they want, low prices and timely delivery of goods. Can anyone tell me what the conflict is? Can anyone tell me what the conflict is? If employees are paid higher wages and given contracts when production is low, then price would increase, meaning Cheap Kit claim cheap kids claim or the customer's claim compromised. And that's where the conflict rises. Because if we provide security, if we provide contracts even when production is low, and if we provide fair wages, then the price of garments would increase, and that means then cheap kids will not be able to pass on the effect of increase in price, leading to lower margins for cheap kids and compromise on cheap kids' claim. So that was this question. The last topic we will cover tomorrow. From tomorrow, I hope we will cover these things faster because they are smaller topics and lesser slides, fewer slides. I have your course progress in mind, so don't worry about that. I'm trying and I'm covering as fast as possible. We will cover, oh, how many paragraphs? Yes, Nayan, you're absolutely right. I did not tell you how many paragraphs. So for employee claims, I would make 1 para. Or you could make 2, depending on how many claims you are going to be mentioning. For customer claims, I would make 1 para. And for the conflict, I would make 1 para. But you could make 2 separate paras for customer claims, 2 separate paras for employee claims, and 1 para for conflict, meaning 5 in total. All right. So thank you guys for today's, for logging on to today's session. We are going to be starting tomorrow. We are going to be uploading the slides for day 2 and day 1 tomorrow as well. Yes, the whole syllabus will be covered by the end of the session. Like I said before, that I will be covering all important topics. That's a promise. The miscellaneous topics, the smaller topics that will be left, will be covered by my revision notes. I will forward them to you by the end of the session. That is also a promise. I am going to make sure that whatever is not covered by this is covered by the revision notes. I'm going to be forwarding the revision notes by the end of the session. That's not up to me, Jawad. That's up to the moderators, and they're going to forward it by the end of the session. Thank you very much. See you guys tomorrow.